Hi there, I'm back with yet another video. We have a variety of animes to talk about, but the one that catches one's eye is none other than Demon Slayer. As the title says, we're gonna talk about why you must watch Demon Slayer. Disclaimer: all the stuff I'll be talking is my own opinion about the anime. I do not claim that all of it is perfect. Feel free to write down in the comment section if you think I was wrong somewhere. Beware, possible spoilers ahead. To begin with, let's do a quick synopsis of Demon Slayer. Tanjiro, a young boy, lives on some spot on top of a mountain, goes to the town downwards to sell charcoal and earn a living. Has a happy family and people in the town loves him to boot for his helping and kind nature. One day he arrives home just to find his family brutally murdered, but his one younger sister who has been turned into a demon. The story follows his journey to cure his sister and avenge his family. Sounds like a typical shonen anime, no? Wait, before you jump into any conclusions, do you know the anime has won numerous awards including the Anime of the Year award? You guys might think why it is considered a very popular anime despite being a typical shonen anime. So I'll tell you why. In fact, this video is made for that purpose itself. The first thing that comes to my mind is the emotions put on in this anime, the heartwarming gestures, the love between Tanjiro and his family, the joyous atmosphere in their home although they are poor, the fear on Tanjiro's face when he found his family dead, Rui's mom when she was about to die, and Tanjiro and Nezuko vs Rui fight are some of the prime examples of how well the anime is made emotionally. Animation. The animation is superb, I must say. There is no doubt about it. The sceneries are beautifully shown with the different camera angles. The facial expressions of the characters are just mind-blowing. The way the fight scenes are presented is really impressive, and the action with different camera angles would make your heart really excited. Everything just flows incredibly well. Art style. The unique eyes of the characters and the way the characters are drawn is very beautiful. The hair of characters, the tears that fall, added with the animation, hooks the watchers in. The incredibly smooth fight scenes and the visuals during the fights are amazing. The blue waves of breathing techniques and the flames are so beautifully drawn that one really couldn't look away for even a bit. The one thing that I noticed was the presentation of the culture and tradition. The clothes worn by people gives the viewer a sense of their culture. The beautiful fire dance of Tanjiro's father displays their tradition. The Tengu mask worn by Sakonji Urokodaki in Japanese tradition. These masks are said to frighten bad spirits and bring good luck, and the small details like Tanjiro's earrings all reflect to the culture and traditions shown in the anime. Fight scenes. I've said earlier too that the anime has great fight scenes. It's not just the fight scenes but the setting where the scenes occur, like Tanjiro's first fight with the Demon Slayer in the snowy weather with trees all around. Also, every fight is well balanced with not just the use of only strength but also outsmarting the opponent. My personal favorite fight scene is Tanjiro and Nezuko vs Rui with such emotions. The background music, the camera angles, the dialogues, the visuals were perfectly smooth. Tanjiro's love for his sister is perfectly shown in the fight. That fight can literally give goosebumps to anyone. Relationship between the characters. Watching the love between Tanjiro and his family is really heartwarming. They live happily despite being poor. Especially the relationship between Tanjiro and Nezuko that's displayed is really touching. The relationship between Kanai and Kanao is curious too, as Kanai was the one to buy Kanao and put her out of a life of misery. Another relation I can think of is of Yoshiro and Tamayo. The fondness of Yoshiro towards Tamayo is incomparable ever since he saved his life. Inspiring. Demon Slayer is very inspiring. The hard work Tanjiro does during training in the forest is really inspiring, especially all the time he spent training to cut the boulder into two. Watching him, I was very overwhelmed. The empathy he shows even towards the demons who tried to kill him is amazingly wonderful. The bond between him and Nezuko is also remarkable as well as beautiful. When he fought so bravely with Jiu in the forest to save Nezuko, even though he knew he had no chance at all, is really inspiring. Anyone would be inspired by this anime. Any great anime is incomplete without a strong, terrifying antagonist. In fact, the antagonist plays a very important role to hooking in the viewers. Muzan Kibutsuji, the main antagonist of the anime, is the most powerful and terrifying of the demons. He is the demon lord, the progenitor of many other demons. He has a group of 12 more powerful demons under his direct command called the 12 Demon Moons. He He is a very interesting character and people love to see him. So guys, these were some of the reasons in my opinion for why you must watch Demon Slayer. Also guys, I must tell you that its sequel movie named Demon Slayer Infinity Train has been released recently and had broken numerous records. The most important one is that it has surpassed Spirited Away as the top grossing film of all time in the country despite the pandemic. I hope you guys watched Demon Slayer. I don't need to state the reason because now you guys already know it. And let me know in the comments if you are excited to watch it or have already watched it. If you want me to make a video about a specific anime, feel free to write it down in the comment section. If you are new to my channel, do like and subscribe to my channel and I'll be back soon with another video. Sayonara.